Góðan daginn, good afternoon. I'm so pleased to be here today presenting this project to you because this has been a huge collaboration with contributions from all the leading scientists, all the leading specialists in Icelandic volcanoes and the hazards that they can pose. So I'm incredibly proud to be the one who gets to introduce this to you. So the Catalogue of Icelandic Volcanoes is a website. It's at icelandicvolcanoes.is. It is in English and open to all. And the idea behind it is to create an information source about Icelandic volcanoes that is official and reliable, but at the same time, easily accessible to people who are not necessarily specialists in Icelandic volcanoes. How did this all start? Well, we had an eruption in 2010 at Eyjafjallajökull. And after this eruption, after all the chaos it caused for aviation, there was a lot of interest from the international community about being able to learn about Icelandic volcanoes, have this information all in one place. So when something starts to happen, you can just go to this one source and be sure you're getting the most reliable, most accurate information. Funding came forward from several large organizations. Most of it came from the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. It was also supported by the Icelandic government and the European Commission. They funded a huge project that was called FutureVolc and took place here in Iceland. But why was this deemed necessary? This is because, contrary to how Icelandic volcanoes sometimes portrayed, they're not all like Eyjafjallajökull, and not all eruptions are like the one in 2010. If they were, our life would actually be a lot easier, but they're not. Instead, we have 32 volcanic systems, and each volcanic system has more than one volcano. And each of these volcanic systems is an individual. And the eruptions they produce vary hugely. They vary hugely in terms of where they occur, how often they occur, how long do they last, do they produce ash, do they produce lava, do they produce something else entirely? What kind of hazards do they produce? It's just all a huge collection. Iceland is record-breaking in that sense. I've put up there pictures of eruptions that have happened in the last 20 years. The reason I selected the last 20 years is not random, but that's how long I've lived in Iceland. So people of my age, my generation, they have seen an eruption every 2 or 3 years. And eruption frequency has been going up over the last several decades. My Icelandic grandmother told me that when she was little, they saw Hekla volcano erupting in 1947, and they thought that would be the only eruption they would see in their lifetimes. But eruptions have been occurring quite a lot more frequently than that. So, why do we want information to be easily accessible? This is because there is a lot of easily accessible information out there, but as we all know, it's not necessarily reliable. I've just put together some of the top results that came up when I Googled Iceland volcano eruption. And sadly, the media often predicts that 2010 eruption is going to repeat itself. Now, even 6 years on, every time volcano stirs in Iceland, it seems that the media just says, oh my God, we're going to have chaos in aviation. And the headlines they use are often this clickbait style, OMG, it's going to be the end of the world if Iceland erupts. And often they just get things wrong. This was an otherwise well-meaning article trying to describe unrest in Katla. And the volcano the picture is not Katla. I don't actually even know where that is. On the other hand, we do have a lot of reliable, very accurate information out there. The problem is that that information is often in the form of a scientific paper in a scientific journal. And the problem with that is that those papers are very technical, they're very jargony. For instance, I'm a geochemist, and next to me in my office is a geophysicist, and I don't understand the papers that she reads. So people who are not volcanologists don't stand a chance. Another problem with that is that they're very narrow, so by reading one paper, you're not going to get an overview. And the third problem is that they're often published in paid-for access journals. So we want to marry the two, because fast access to reliable information is a hugely variable resource. To put this into context of monitoring volcanoes, in Iceland we have an institute, Veðurstofa Íslands, Icelandic Met Office. They're the ones who bear the responsibility for monitoring volcanoes, but also all natural hazards, not just the weather, but everything from snow avalanches to floods, everything in between. They are already excellent at putting up information online in real time. This is a snapshot of their website. You can see there earthquakes that have occurred in the last 48 hours, and specialists put remarks up if there's something unusual happening. So Icelandic Met Office monitors, and they also have the mandate to then put out this information to the stakeholders. One of the most important stakeholders is the Icelandic Civil Protection, because then they're the ones who would close the roads, they would evacuate people. And they also have a close working relationship with the University of Iceland, the specialist there. So let's consider a scenario where volcano starts showing unrest. It was quiet before, now something new is happening. So of course, question comes up, what does this mean and what is it likely to lead to? Yeah? These three institutes would normally come together, they would confer, and they would decide what they think is the most likely sequence of events. The Icelandic Met Office is then also responsible for keeping the UK Met Office updated. Why the UK Met Office? The UK Met Office is the institute that is responsible for modeling and forecasting where ash clouds from Icelandic volcanoes will go within European airspace. And they, in turn, have colleagues all over the world. The world is split up into what we call volcanic ash advisory centers. So when ash clouds travel around the world, it's different institutes that bear responsibility for communicating with aviation. And of course, all of these specialists also have a big responsibility for communicating to the stakeholders, other decision makers, the public, the media, just to name a few. So if information is flowing freely, great, fantastic, because poor information flow is a drain on resources. So if we consider the same scenario, but there isn't a very good information flow. For instance, the media sees something, that there's an earthquake happening in a volcano, but there is no adequate explanation with it, and information is difficult to come by. They might consult someone who pretends to be a specialist but isn't. So inadequate info often leads to misleading reports. And these misleading reports, there's going to be an end of the world eruption, spread like wildfire. And before we know it, Icelandic Met Office and other specialists are flooded by requests to clarify the information. Why is there a volcano about to erupt and we haven't heard about it? It's easier to prevent fires from starting than putting them out. So by creating IcelandicVolcanoes.is, we are creating just yet another tool in improving information flow to the different stakeholders out there. How do we make it reliable? We assembled together all the leading specialists in Icelandic volcanoes. We asked the person who knows the volcano the best to contribute material. I'm sure there are many names on that list that you'll recognize from when something volcanic is happening in Iceland. So if you like, it comes from the horse's mouth. And how did we make it accessible? There was a lot of time spent on developing the website. This is a system structure diagram that shows you how it's built up. We have the presentation layer facing the users. There's maps, there's text, there's images out there. Then beneath that is a service layer that connects the presentation layer to the underlying database layer. Database layer is complex. It's composed of many different databases that it's calling upon. For instance, our maps are coming from 2 different institutes in Iceland. We also have live information streaming in, as well as static information. So without any further ado, now it's time to demonstrate to you what we came up with. I'm going to try to demonstrate this live. Hopefully that will happen. All right, here's IcelandicVolcanoes.is. When you first come onto the website, you're greeted with a bit of information about the website, and you will immediately see there is a map of Iceland with 32 colored dots on it. The 32 colored dots are 32 volcanic systems, and the green color represents the current live aviation color code. Green color means that there is currently nothing special happening in the volcano. If something starts to happen, the Icelandic Met Office may raise this first to yellow, then amber, and eventually red if there's danger to aviation through ash eruptions. If you look closely at Snæfellsnes Peninsula, there are 2 gray volcanoes there. This means there is inadequate monitoring to tell us that everything is quiet. Everything appears to be quiet, but we can't be sure. So we're honest, we're saying we just don't know. If you know which volcano you want to look at in more detail, you can go ahead and click on it on the map, or you can use the left-hand side list to pick one of them. However, the list on the left-hand side is also designed to help you find the volcano if you're not really sure which one will answer your question. For instance, you might want to know which are the most active volcanoes in Iceland. So you can sort them by their activity level, and then you'll see that Bárðarbunga, Grímsvötn, Hekla, and Katla are the ones that are considered to be highly active. And then you can also search for the last eruption. So Bárðarbunga comes up on top again because we had an eruption there just under 2 years ago. Then Grímsvötn, Eyjafjallajökull, and so on. To then get more detailed information about each volcano, you can go down in layers according to how interested you are. So for instance, there's a tool here called Activity Status. This is a live tool we developed within this project. It shows you how active the volcano is at the moment. It may not be erupting, but there's something always going on in most of the volcanic systems. So the red bar shows how many earthquakes have occurred in Bárðarbunga in the last year, the last month, week and day. For comparison, there's a blue bar that shows number of earthquakes that we consider to be background. Nothing special is happening, the volcano is sleeping. So in the case of Bárðarbunga, you can easily see that the red bar dwarfs the blue bar, showing that Bárðarbunga has been very active. So the idea behind this is to allow people to very easily understand that even though there are earthquakes occurring, it doesn't mean the volcano is about to erupt. But in this case, there's every reason to keep a closer eye on Bárðarbunga. There's also a number of photographs illustrating both the volcanic system and any eruptions that we have photographs of. And then you come to the most detailed part of the catalogue. So if you're pressed for time and, for example, you're a media person, you just want a quick overlook over what the volcanic system is like, what kind of eruptions we can expect, what kind of hazards, there is the beginning there is called short description. That's what it's designed for. But then if you're looking for more detail, you can dive further in and go into detailed description. And again, it's subdivided to help people find what they're looking for with relatively little effort. There is text, but it's also accompanied by figures where that is appropriate. So here's a picture describing visually what kind of eruptions we can expect in Bárðarbunga. You can see very easily that 90% almost of eruptions in Bárðarbunga are explosive basaltic type, while the eruption we had recently in Hålatrain is actually really rare. It's only 10% of the known eruptions. We have also a lot of interactive map layers, interactive in the sense that they can be queried for more detailed information. For instance, in the Bárðarbunga system, I want to see the central volcanoes, and I see, there are 2 volcanoes, okay. I wonder what they're called. Okay, the larger one is called Bárðarbunga, same as the volcanic system, and the smaller one is called Hamarinn. You can see the Fisher swarm, which is really large in Bárðarbunga, and that Fisher swarm has produced lavas that have gone all the way to the south coast of Iceland. Both the base map layer and the lava maps are very, very accurate, so it's very interesting to zoom in and see what kind of lava flow your house is built on. You can then, of course, see more detailed information about individual lava flows. For instance, here's Hålatrain, the youngest lava in Iceland. I click on it, and I get up things like which year it was produced, how it was mapped out. In this sense, in this case, it was ground-based measurements and satellite images. And like I say, we use the best available maps for this project. In some cases, these maps have not even been published elsewhere. Then I would like to mention to you something we've put quite a lot of work into, and those are eruption scenarios for each volcano. I'm going to switch volcanoes and go to Katla, because everyone is, of course, interested in knowing when it's going to erupt and what kind of eruption it's going to make. So they're here, possible eruption scenarios. We describe them in the same way for each volcano. We describe a small eruption, a moderately sized eruption, and a large eruption. And again, this text is very concise, so that when something starts to happen, Katla is going to erupt. Monitoring people can say, this is going to be a small eruption. And then it's very easy to look up. So how long is this eruption likely to last? How much ash is going to be produced? What kind of hazards do we expect? And again, they are accompanied by visual information as much as possible. Here's a graph showing what kind of eruptions happen in Katla and how often. And it's easy to see that small eruptions in Katla are actually by far the most common. So poor Katla is often portrayed in the media as only producing end-of-the-world eruptions. But those very large eruptions are actually really rare. We have also photographs of eruptions of those sizes. For example, this is the 1918 eruption in Katla. And again, we show where ash went during the eruption in interactive style. I'm going to just demonstrate quickly. This is where ash went during the 1755 eruption, for instance, which was a large eruption. And then you can dive so much deeper. You can see where samples have been collected of the ash. You can get information about each individual sample and the data behind it. This is now becoming quite technical. This graph shows how big each individual ash particle is in that sample. This is necessary for people who are running models or where ash clouds went in the past and where they're going to go in the future. And all of this is downloadable. Now I've shown you how you can find information about each volcanic system, but you can also search for individual eruptions. So now I'm really interested in the 1918 eruption of Katla. So we have an option there called eruption search. You can search using various parameters. For instance, you can narrow your search down to which volcanic system you're interested in. At the moment, you can only see there are four systems, which may not seem like very much, given that we have 32. But actually, these 4 volcanic systems are so active that they have produced over 80% of all Iceland's eruption. And in this version of this catalog, we went with quality of data over quantity. We know these volcanoes very, very well. So by including only high-quality data in our catalog, we have very statistically significant database. Anyone doing statistical analysis will have very high confidence levels. But we have work in progress to include more volcanic systems. So I'm going to have a look at Katla, and I want to see all large eruptions that have happened in Katla. I search, I get first up a small summary table, and then I can obtain much more detailed information. They not only describe how the eruption was in terms of how much ash or lava there was, but they also describe impact. So were there fatalities, were there evacuations? And of course, all of this is downloadable without registering. Last but not the least, I'm going to go and show you the lasting data portal. This is a hugely important part of this work. This makes scientific data open access. And while this may be a small step for the IT business, this is a huge leap for scientists, because scientists are very, very protective of their data. They don't like making their data available online unless it's already been published in a scientific publication. But here, and actually this was one of the main reasons we were given this funding by the European Union, is because there's such a push in the scientific community to make data available online as quickly as possible. So this is a huge step forward. You can narrow the search of your data by using various parameters again. For instance, you can narrow it down to which eruption you're interested in. We have included all eruptions since 2010. I'm going to select Eyjafjallajökull, and I'm interested in GPS data. You get it up, and you can download it. You have to be a registered user. This is to make sure that data that is uploaded up there, when it's being used, you can make sure that the author is acknowledged. One other important part about this is that you not only can download data, you can also upload it. You don't have to be a scientist that runs a monitoring network. You can upload photographs or reports, for instance. And again, by creating this platform, we assure people that if they put data up there, that it will be acknowledged if it's used by someone else. So there is quite a lot more on this website, and I just don't have time to go into this today. For instance, the map layer is excellent, and it offers you to play with it quite a lot. You can see where earthquakes have occurred in the last 48 hours, again, obtaining information about them. You can see where monitoring stations are, such as seismic stations, weather stations, and so on. So I can only encourage you to go and have a play, and by all means leave us feedback about what you would like to see in there as well, whether this is useful, and so on. Can I go back to the PowerPoint, please? So just to finish off, the website has now been live for just over a year, and it's interesting for us to see whether it has been used and whether there's any evidence it has been useful. So I'm going to use my friend Katla again to demonstrate this. Katla is probably our most famous, or rather infamous, volcano in Iceland. This is a bar chart that shows how active Katla has been since the year 2011. Yellow shading up there show periods when Katla has been particularly active. Since July last year, it has been very active indeed, and the activity level has remained high. You may remember from the news on 30th of September last year, we had a big peak, huge earthquakes, a lot of them, everyone was kept on their toes. And our site was launched there. So let me now zoom in to this period since the site was launched. These are now daily earthquakes in Katla since we launched the website, and these are the visits to the website. And this was so pleasing to see. This was amazing. So we have a high peak in visits when Katla became active first, and then we have a high number of visits accompanying most of the large peaks in Katla's activity as well. And also just the average number of visits to the site has also increased. This is so pleasing for us because it means people are using the website as their information source. There are a couple of peaks that are not related to Katla, the media coverage. So the catalog, or rather this website, has also been used in operational sense. If you remember from the beginning of my presentation, I talked about the UK Met Office being responsible for telling aviation where ash clouds from Iceland are going. So when Katla became very, very unrestful on 30th of September, the UK Met Office was ready. They took information from IcelandicVolcanoes.is. They looked at the eruption scenarios, and they said, this is the most likely eruption scenario. This is how much ash is likely to be produced. This is how high up in the atmosphere the ash is going to go. So we're going to start running our model. If Katla now erupts, we know where the ash is going to go. So you can see there, the colored pixels is the ash cloud from Katla. That luckily never happened, but they were ready. So you already have 18 hours in advance telling where the ash is going to go. And this is exactly how we hope this website will be used by decision makers. We just put the information out there, but they make their own plans for how they are going to be reacting if something happens. The visits to the site are very international. Over 70% are from outside of Iceland and representing almost every country, which is really pleasing for us as well because it was a slightly controversial decision to make this website in English rather than Icelandic to begin with. But translating it into Icelandic, at least in part, is one of our next steps. And this is going to continue to be a live project, meaning that when we have new information about a volcano, for instance, an eruption happens, or we learn something new about the volcano from scientific research, the website will be updated. Also, I mentioned something about updating the eruption database. We are working on that, introducing not just the four most active volcanoes, but others as well. And more. Excuse me. Something I thought about this morning when I heard the cyborgs talk is that movements inside volcanoes make colors and they make sounds. So possibly in one of the future versions, we might have that information in there. Every volcano might have its own tune. I don't know, one of Katla may be called A Song of Ice and Fire. So this is it. We are based in the Expo as well, where the website is available for everyone to come and play. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions in Icelandic or English. Yes, most of it is downloadable, yeah. Yes, you have to acknowledge where the data came from, but you are free to use it, that is correct. Okay. Oh. It is all in English at the moment. That's one of the next steps, is to translate it into Icelandic. Yeah, all of us think that's a hugely important part, actually, to translate it into Icelandic. The decision to make it, of course. Yep. We have already advertised this to menntaskólar, but we would love to see this used for grunnskólar as well, because there's so much information in there. And the decision to make it into English was because funding came from the Aviation Society, and European Union, so it was an important step to have it in English to begin with. And for instance, the only other catalogue online that can rival this one in detail is the one in Japan, but it's all in Japanese. And you can't, you know, for us, that's no use. Okay. Thank you.